The feature nobody warned you about. Pull up your phone right now. Open whatever social media app you use the most. Scroll through your settings. Somewhere buried under privacy controls, notification preferences, and terms nobody reads, there is a location sharing feature. And there is a very real possibility that it is already turned on. You might have enabled it months ago during setup without thinking twice. Maybe a friend asked you to turn it on so you could find each other at a concert. Maybe the app just defaulted to it during an update and you never bothered to check. The point is, you may have already handed strangers a live feed of exactly where you are, where you sleep, and when you leave your home, without ever realizing it. This is not a hypothetical warning. This is not a paranoid overreaction from someone who never leaves their house. What you are about to hear happened to real people, ordinary teenagers and young adults living ordinary lives in ordinary American neighborhoods who had no idea that a small glowing dot on a digital map had made them a target. 3 stories. 3 people who learned the hard way that location sharing is not a harmless convenience. 3 encounters with individuals who used publicly available information to cross lines that should never be crossed. Lines between curiosity and obsession, between watching and hunting, between a stranger on the internet and someone standing inside your bedroom. Stay with me, because by the time you finish listening to all 3 of these accounts, you will understand exactly how something as small and seemingly innocent as a location icon can unravel your sense of safety in ways you never imagined possible. Let us start at the beginning. Let us start with a 17-year-old kid from Columbus, Ohio, who made the mistake of keeping his location visible to everyone on his friends list, including someone who should never have been on that list at all. The kid in the corner. The ad request that started everything. His name was Ryan, 17 years old, a junior at Westfield High School in Columbus, Ohio, where social media wasn't just a pastime. It was practically a survival tool. If you did not have a profile on the dominant app of the moment, you were automatically suspect. People would ask where your account was, why you were not on there, what you had to hide. Even the quietest, most withdrawn students at Westfield had active accounts. It was just what you did. Ryan had his location sharing enabled on his app, and he will be the first to tell you he cannot fully explain why. Part of it was the social currency of it. His friends could see that he was out on a Friday night, that he was at the basketball game, that his weekend was worth tracking. It was a subtle kind of social proof, and he bought into it the way most teenagers do without examining it too closely. But there was someone else at Westfield High who had noticed Ryan long before, that cold December when everything changed. His name was Marcus Webb. Marcus had been a fixture in the margins of Westfield since middle school. Not dangerous looking, not threatening in any way that would raise alarms. Just permanently deeply off. Teachers had soft conversations about him. Counselors had pulled him aside. Parents of other kids had mentioned him in passing at school board meetings without ever being able to articulate exactly what the problem was. He sat alone in the cafeteria, not at the end of a lunch table, but physically apart from the nearest group, sometimes facing the wall. He did not make eye contact easily. When he did speak, it was too much or too little, either complete silence or a sudden burst of words that did not quite fit the conversation. No one at Westfield knew whether Marcus had a diagnosis or a documented condition. No one could point to a specific incident that proved he was dangerous. He was just the kid who made the air feel slightly different when he walked into a room. Ryan knew who Marcus was the same way everyone at Westfield knew. You absorbed that knowledge the way you absorbed any ambient fact about your school. The leaky roof in the gym, the vending machine that ate quarters, the kid named Marcus Webb who sat alone and stared at nothing. Which is why, one afternoon during winter break of his junior year, Ryan's phone buzzed with a friend request from an account belonging to someone named Marcus Webb, and Ryan's immediate reaction was not curiosity, but a slow, creeping discomfort that started somewhere behind his sternum. He stared at the notification for a long time. He put the phone face down. He picked it up again. He could not figure out how Marcus had gotten his username. Ryan's profile was not exactly private, but it was not prominently displayed either. The most likely explanation was that Marcus had seen it somewhere, maybe through mutual connections, maybe through a search. That possibility alone was enough to make Ryan's skin prickle. But Ryan accepted the request anyway. He will tell you this was not bravery or stupidity, or even deliberate decision-making. He accepted because he was the kind of person who defaulted to politeness, even when politeness was not in his best interest. He accepted because rejecting the request felt like a confrontation he was not prepared to have. He accepted because some part of him said, "It's just an app. It's just a friend request. It doesn't mean anything." It meant something. The photographs within minutes of accepting Marcus's request, Ryan's phone buzzed again. 2 notifications, a picture, followed by a video. Ryan did not open them right away. He set the phone on his desk and watched a couple hours of television with the screen face down, trying to manufacture enough indifference to feel safe about whatever was waiting in those messages. When he finally did open them, lying in bed that night with the lamp off and only the glow of his phone illuminating the ceiling, his throat tightened. The first item was a photograph. It was taken in the Westfield High cafeteria. Ryan recognized the long rectangular tables, the industrial lighting, the particular shade of green on the far wall that had always reminded him of a hospital. He was in the photograph, sitting at his usual table, eating lunch, completely unaware that anyone was capturing the moment. The image was clear, composed, deliberate. This was not an accidental background appearance. He was the subject. The second item was a video. It had been filmed at the moment when the lunch bell rang and the cafeteria erupted into movement. Students pushing back chairs, grabbing bags, streaming toward the exits. The camera, Marcus's phone, was moving with the crowd, but tracking one specific figure. Ryan watched himself stand up from the table, sling his backpack over one shoulder, exchange a word with the guy next to him and walk toward the cafeteria doors. Zoomed in, deliberate, steady. At the bottom of the video, a caption. "You're cute, LOL." Ryan read the caption 3 times. He thought about the fact that Marcus had been close enough to film him without Ryan ever noticing. He thought about how many other times Marcus might have been watching without Ryan knowing. He thought about the word cute and what it meant coming from a person he had never spoken to, who had captured him on video without his knowledge, who had then chosen to send that video with a caption that blurred every category Ryan used to understand social interaction. He almost removed Marcus from his contacts right then. His thumb hovered over the option, but he did not do it. He closed the app, plugged in his phone, and tried to convince himself that the weird feeling in his chest was just discomfort, not warning. He did not sleep well. Mason Street. Later that same evening, Ryan's phone buzzed again. He had been hoping the notification would be from one of his actual friends, something to replace the sourness in his mouth from Marcus's messages. Instead, it was Marcus himself, sending a direct message. "You live on Ridgewood Avenue." Ryan read the message and felt something cold move through him. He answered back with one word, "Yeah," before his brain fully caught up with what he was doing. He answered by reflex. He answered because denying it seemed pointless when the location on his profile was already visible. He answered before he thought about the fact that he should not be having this conversation at all. Marcus replied immediately, "Nice." and then nothing. Ryan put the phone face down and decided he was not opening any more messages tonight. He was not going to give Marcus the reaction he was clearly looking for. He was going to go to sleep, and in the morning he would block the account, and that would be the end of it. But Marcus did not stop messaging. The notifications kept stacking up. Not frantic, not threatening in obvious language, just persistent, building, a series of buzzes that Ryan could feel through the mattress even with the phone on his nightstand. He did not look at them. He turned onto his side, pulled the covers up, closed his eyes. At some point, he fell asleep. The window. When Ryan woke up the next morning, two things were wrong. His bedroom window was open. His closet door was open. He had not opened either of them before bed. He was certain of this the way you are certain of small physical facts, not because he made a habit of checking, but because it was December in Columbus and the overnight temperature had dropped into the low 20s. His room was cold in a way that December mornings in Ohio are cold. A biting, getting into your bones cold that you do not sleep through with the window cracked. He sat up in bed and said out loud, to nobody, "What the hell?" Then he picked up his phone. The notifications from Marcus had multiplied overnight. Ryan opened the app with hands that had started very slightly to shake. Marcus had sent a series of photographs. Ryan scrolled through them in sequence, and with each image the temperature in the room seemed to drop another degree. First, a photograph of a sidewalk at night. Familiar concrete, familiar cracked section near the edge of the frame. Ridgewood Avenue. Second, a photograph of the exterior of a house. Ryan's house. The porch light on, the small yellow glow of the television visible through the front window. Third, a photograph taken from outside, looking up at a window. Ryan's bedroom window. Ryan recognized the particular pattern of the curtain, the way the blinds he never fully closed left a strip of visible room. Fourth, a photograph taken through the window of Ryan, asleep in his own bed, shot from outside by someone standing close enough to the glass to frame him clearly in the dark. Fifth, a photograph taken from inside the room, Marcus Webb selfie style, standing in the corner near the closet door with Ryan visible and asleep in the background. Sixth, a photograph taken from inside the closet, of Ryan in bed, taken from a position that would have required Marcus to be standing less than 6 feet from where Ryan slept, behind a partially open door, in the dark, for some period of time that Ryan would never be able to calculate. Ryan read the messages that accompanied the photographs. "Answer me. Why do you take so long to answer? Answer. I'm gonna come visit you. LOL, you have your location on. I like watching people sleep. I found you with your location. Hope you don't mind. I think you're cute, are you up? Yet what are you doing?" By this point, Ryan was standing in the middle of his bedroom, still in his pajamas, phone in both hands, reading and rereading the messages in a sequence that his brain kept trying to refuse. Someone had been outside his window. Someone had been inside his room. Someone had been standing in his closet in the dark, watching him sleep. The same someone who, 24 hours ago, had simply been the strange kid at school who sat alone and made people uncomfortable. The screenshots Ryan took that morning, the messages, the conversation, every text, became the foundation of what followed. He did not get a screenshot of every photograph before Marcus deleted the account. He got most of them. Enough. His parents were in the kitchen when he came downstairs. He showed them the phone. His father, a careful, practical man who generally responded to problems with questions before reacting, looked at the screen for a long time and then said, "We are calling the police right now." The investigation that followed brought the school into it, brought Marcus's living situation into it. What the police found painted a picture that, in retrospect, explained Marcus in ways that nobody at Westfield had ever thought to investigate. He lived with his father in a house on the east side of Columbus. His father was not well, consumed by alcohol in the way that leaves a household without structure or supervision, or the ordinary friction of adult oversight. Marcus had grown up essentially without boundaries because there was no one enforcing them. The screenshots of the conversation, Marcus explicitly stating he had used the location feature to find Ryan, explicitly stating he had been inside the house, were sufficient. Sufficient for charges. Sufficient for consequences. Marcus Webb did not return to Westfield High School. There were rumors that he and his father left Columbus entirely. Ryan never saw him again. He turned off location sharing the same morning he showed his parents the phone. He has never turned it on again. The kid with the bowl. Cut Westfield's other problem. Before we get to what happened with Ashley Monroe and Jade Collins, and we will get there, I promise, because that account is the one that will stay with you longest, we need to talk about Derek Harmon. If Marcus Webb was Westfield High's quiet, invisible threat, Derek Harmon was the loud, visible one. He had been suspended 3 times by the start of his sophomore year. His pranks were the kind that required air quotes around the word prank, the kind that left people shaken, that crossed lines, that prompted calls home and meetings with administrators and the particular look that school counselors develop after years of sitting across from students who seemed to enjoy causing harm. He was not subtle about who he was. Brown hair cut in a blunt, unfortunate bowl cut that somehow made him look both younger and more menacing than he was. Pale in the way that people are pale when they spend most of their time indoors developing plans. He had a reputation for pushing things just far enough that consequences were theoretically possible, but somehow never quite materialized until they absolutely had to. The narrator of this second story, we'll call him Owen, was 16 when Derek appeared on his radar. Owen had his social media account linked from his other profiles because he posted frequently and had a decent following. Not famous, not an influencer in any meaningful sense, but visible enough that random people added him occasionally. He was used to that. He was not used to what came from adding Derek Harmon. Owen cannot remember adding Derek specifically. He must have. The app showed a history that included Derek's account at some point in the past. But when Derek's notification appeared while Owen was mid-game on his console, Owen barely registered the name. He set the phone down. He died in the video game. He picked the phone back up and opened Derek's most recent message. It was a photograph, extremely zoomed in, shot at close range, framed with the kind of deliberate composition that suggested the photographer knew exactly what they were doing. The subject of the photograph was a door handle, specifically the external locking mechanism of a residential door. The latch catch, the strike plate, the deadbolt housing. The caption said, "Hello, the deck." Owen took a screenshot immediately. He was not certain why. Maybe because the image felt too specific to be random, too carefully framed to be accidental, and some instinct for documentation kicked in before he fully processed what he was looking at. He texted Derek directly. "Why did you send me that?" Derek replied with another image. This one was blurry, shot through glass from outside at an angle that made the interior slightly distorted. But Owen knew what he was looking at within approximately 1 second. He recognized the countertop. He recognized the position of the refrigerator. He recognized the particular way the light fell from the fixture above the kitchen island. It was his kitchen, photographed through his kitchen window. Owen was moving before he fully decided to move. Down the hall, through the living room, into the kitchen. He looked out the window. Standing on the back deck of his family's home in the early evening, was Derek Harmon, phone in hand, looking back at him. When their eyes met through the glass, Derek laughed. It wasn't a nervous laugh. It was not an awkward situation laugh. It was the laugh of someone who was exactly where they wanted to be, doing exactly what they had planned. Owen ran to the side of the house and around to the dining room entrance, throwing open the door. Derek was still on the deck, still laughing. His right hand was behind his back. Owen told him to leave. Get off the deck, get off the property, leave. Derek slowly drew his right hand from behind his back. He was holding a knife. Not a pocket knife. Not a box cutter. A kitchen knife. The kind with a blade long enough to be unambiguous about its purpose. Owen slammed the door. He locked it. He pressed his back against it for a moment before his body reminded him to move. And he moved, checking every external door in the house. Front door locked. Garage door locked. Sliding door in the back checked and secured. He yelled through the dinings. Room door that he was calling 911 if Derek did not leave immediately. He heard Derek laugh again from the other side of the door. Then footsteps on the deck. Then silence. Owen looked through the dining room window and watched Derek walk slowly across the backyard. Knife still visible, not running, not hurrying, just walking. Like a person with no particular concern about what came next. Owen's parents were not home. He was alone. He did not call 911 in that moment, a decision he has questioned since. But he did take screenshots of both photographs Derek had sent, the door handle and the kitchen window shot. And he did call his mother, who came home with his father 20 minutes later and made the calls that needed to be made. Derek Harmon's school record provided plenty of context when the time came. So did the screenshots. So did Owen's statement about the knife. What happened next in terms of legal consequence is not entirely clear. Derek was a minor and juvenile proceedings have layers of privacy built into them. But he did not return to the same school, and Owen did not see him again in any context that felt threatening. What Owen carried forward from the experience was less about Derek specifically and more about the nature of connection. He had added Derek without remembering doing so. He had given Derek access without intention. He had provided, through his publicly available profile and linked accounts, enough identifying information for Derek to find his neighborhood, his street, and the specific angle of his kitchen window. He turned his accounts private that same night. He audited every connection he had. He removed location sharing entirely. He still cannot walk through his kitchen without glancing at the window. What Owen thinks about now. What Owen dwells on, more than the knife or the laugh or the photograph of the kitchen he has cooked 1,000 meals in since then, is the door handle photograph. That was the first message Derek sent. A zoomed-in close-up of a locking mechanism on a residential door. Not a threatening message. Not a declaration of intent. Just hello. Owen has thought about what that means. He has thought about it in the middle of the night, the kind of thinking that happens when you are lying in the dark and your brain serves up something you have been trying not to look at directly. The door handle photograph was not an accident. It was an announcement. Derek was telling Owen something with that photograph, not in language, not an explicit threat, but in image. He was saying, I know how doors work. I know what keeps people inside and what keeps people out. I know what's between you and me. And then he showed up. That is the thing about people like Derek Harmon. They are not random. They are not impulsive in the way that word implies chaos. What they do is deliberate, sequenced, communicated in a private language that most people do not know how to read until they are already standing at the locked door with someone on the other side. Owen was lucky. He was home. He moved fast. The door was already locked and stayed locked. He does not let himself think too carefully about what might have happened if any of those variables had been different. The girls in the car, the night it rained. The third story is different from the first two in ways that matter. Ryan's encounter with Marcus Webb had the particular horror of someone you already knew, someone whose face you had seen in the cafeteria, whose presence you had always found uncomfortable. That recognition gave the situation a frame, even a terrible one. Owen's encounter with Derek Harmon had the horror of physicality, the knife, the laugh, the presence on the deck. That situation had a body in space, something you could point to and say, that is the threat. This story has neither of those anchors. This story is about strangers, total strangers with low account scores and carefully chosen usernames, who appeared one rainy evening out of what seemed like nowhere, and who turned out to have been far closer than anywhere. The narrator of this third account goes by the name Cole. At the time of these events, he was 22 years old, living in his family's home in a suburb of Columbus while finishing his final year of college. He kept his social media handle linked from his more prominent profiles because his content was popular enough that new followers came regularly and he had long since stopped paying close attention to every new ad request. This was a habit that had never caused problems before. On a rainy Thursday evening in October, Cole was at his friend's apartment about 20 minutes from home. He noticed two new accounts had added him almost simultaneously, which was unusual in itself, since his follows tended to come in sporadic singles rather than pairs. One account was named Ashley Monroe. The other was Jade Collins. He added them both back without much thought. Ashley Monroe had a low account score. Jade Collins had a slightly higher one, still modest by any measure. Neither account had much visible history. Cole noticed this the way you notice background noise, registered and then set aside. Ashley's account sent him a message shortly after he accepted. "You're cute." Cole read it and did not respond. He had received messages like this before. Compliments from strangers were not unusual given his following, and something about the combination of the new account and the generic opener made him categorize it mentally as either a bot or someone being casually weird. He checked the app's map feature more out of habit than intention. Ashley Monroe and Jade Collins were showing location. They were nearby. Not vaguely nearby. Specifically nearby, in the direction of Cole's neighborhood, moving. Cole looked at the map for a moment. He put his phone down. He talked with his friend for another 20 minutes. Then the weather started getting worse. Not ordinary October rain, but the kind that comes sideways that makes driving feel like a negotiation. And Cole said his goodbyes and got in his car. He pulled onto the highway. Traffic was light. Visibility was low, and he drove below the speed limit because the rain was coming down in sheets and the road markings were barely visible. He had been on the highway for about 4 minutes when headlights appeared in his rearview mirror. The rearview mirror. The car behind him stayed at a consistent distance, not aggressively close, not harmlessly far, just there, steady, matching his speed on a highway that was otherwise empty. Cole noticed it the way you notice something that doesn't quite add up, and then try to convince yourself that it adds up fine. He took his exit off I-270. The car followed. Still not conclusive. It was a neighborhood exit. People lived out that way. He turned onto the main road toward home. The car turned with him. Cole's hands tightened on the wheel. He told himself it was probably nothing. He told himself there were reasonable explanations. He turned down the street that led to his parents' house, a residential street, not a through road, not a natural route to anywhere except the houses on it. The car turned with him. He pulled into the driveway, cut the engine, watched in the rearview mirror as the car that had followed him from the highway slowed as it passed his driveway, and stopped, parked on the street. Cole's heart was doing something unusual and helpful. He opened his app with shaking fingers and pulled up the map. Ashley Monroe's location indicator and Jade Collins's location indicator were both showing as directly adjacent to his house, right on top of the marker that represented his own location, right on top of where he was sitting, in his car, in his dark driveway, with a stopped car on the street 20 feet away. He did not get out of the car. He thought about getting out of the car, about running to the front door, about how long it would take and how visible he would be in the rain. He decided against it. Instead, he called the house phone. His father picked up on the second ring. Cole does not remember exactly what he said. He remembers raising his voice. He remembers the word please, and the word outside, and the word now. He remembers looking in the rearview mirror and watching the car on the street begin to reverse, moving back toward the driveway, repositioning. At the exact same moment that the front door of the house opened and his father came out. His father stood on the porch looking toward the street. The car paused, and then it pulled forward, slowly, and drove away. Cole ran through the rain to the front door. His father hugged him on the porch. Cole started to ask who it was, whether his dad had seen anything. His father pulled back and said, "Who were those men?" "Not girls, not two people. Men." His father said he had seen at least 3 large men in the car, looking back at him as it drove under the streetlight. 3. Ashley Monroe, Jade Collins, and at least one more person who had never appeared anywhere in the app interaction, whose existence Cole had not known to look for, who had been in that car on that street in the rain with an unknown purpose on an ordinary Thursday night in October. The second night Cole did not sleep well that night. He told his parents everything. The new followers, the compliment message, the map, the car that had followed him from the highway. His father took it seriously in the way of a man who doesn't have a framework for exactly this kind of threat, but recognizes threat when it presents itself. They checked the locks. They left the porch light on. His father sat in the living room for a while after everyone else had gone to bed. Cole lay in his room and tried to find a comfortable position. He has described this night as a specific kind of sleeplessness. Not the anxious buzzing of ordinary stress, but the hypervigilant alertness of an animal that has been spooked and cannot power down. Every sound outside became something to process. Every car that passed on the street required assessment. He was aware of his window, the blind he had pulled all the way down for the first time in years, and the darkness on the other side of it. He eventually slept from exhaustion around 3 a.m. He woke up at 4:47 a.m. to a sound outside his window, not wind, not weather. The sound of something being moved, deliberate weight, specific placement. The kind of sound that has intention behind it. A garbage can shifting. Footsteps on dry leaves. Something pressing against the exterior wall of the house. Cole lay completely still. His eyes were open, but he did not move, did not reach for his phone, did not turn on the light. He stared at the ceiling and cataloged sounds and calculated distances and did not breathe in any way that could be called normal breathing. And then, just outside his window, close enough that there was no possibility of mishearing, a voice, a low voice, barely above a whisper with the deliberate clarity of someone who wants to be understood. "I know you're awake. Don't move." Cole's whole body responded to those words before his brain did. Every muscle locked. His hands gripped the sheets. He was aware of exactly how much stood between him and whoever was outside that window. A wall, a blind, a pane of glass, and how insufficient that felt. Then another voice. From further away, from inside the house. Cole. Cole, it's me. It's Dad. His father's voice was coming from the hallway, muffled, clearly trying not to alarm whoever was outside while also reaching his son. Cole understood immediately. His father was inside the house, in the hall, close to the bedroom. The voice outside the window had not been his father. His father said quietly through the door, "They're outside. Same car. Stay in the room." Cole heard his father move through the house. He heard the front door open and then footsteps on the porch. His father going outside, visible, deliberate, making himself known. He heard the sound of a car engine starting from the street. He heard the car drive away. His father came back inside and said it was clear. They sat in the kitchen at 5 in the morning with the overhead light on and called the police. His father described the car. Cole provided the app screenshots, the username details, the timeline. The map data showing Ashley Monroe and Jade Collins at his location on 2 separate occasions, separated by roughly 8 hours. Whether Ashley Monroe and Jade Collins were real accounts or constructed personas, whether the names belonged to the people in the car or to some other configuration of people and identities, Cole never found out with certainty. What he found out was that the police took the report seriously, that the car was never definitively connected to any specific individuals through the information available, and that nothing like it happened again. Cole deleted the app. He deleted the linked profile. He audited every public-facing account he owned and removed location data from all of them. He moved out of his parents' house 4 months later and has been deliberate ever since about what information his digital presence makes available. He still thinks about the voice outside his window. He still hears it sometimes in the half-awake moments before sleep, clear and low and close. "I know you're awake. Don't move." What the map doesn't tell you. The architecture of access. By now, you are probably doing one of a few things. You are reviewing your location settings. You are thinking through every account you have and which ones might have that feature enabled. Or you are sitting with a particular uncomfortable feeling, not quite fear, not quite paranoia, but something adjacent to both, that comes from recognizing a vulnerability you did not know you had until someone else paid a consequence for it. That feeling is appropriate. Sit with it for a minute. It is telling you something real. Let us talk about what actually happened in all 3 of these accounts, beneath the surface level of the individual events. Let us talk about the infrastructure. All 3 of these situations were made possible by the same basic design decision, a feature that broadcasts your physical location to a list of people you have decided to call friends in real time, continuously. On a map, you might check once a week and they might check every hour. The feature is opt-in, technically. You agreed to it somewhere in a process of setup and permissions and terms that nobody reads completely. It is legal. It is disclosed. It is, in the architecture of these platforms, a selling point. The selling point makes sense in a certain model of human behavior. That model assumes that your friends list consists of people you have actually met, people whose relationship to you can be summarized accurately by the word friend, people who have a benign and mutual interest in knowing roughly where you are. Under that model, sharing your location is a convenience feature, a safety feature even, a way for people who care about each other to stay loosely connected in geographic space. But the friends list is not a curated collection of verified safe contacts. It is an accumulation. It grows from accepted requests and returned follows, and people from 3 years ago whose names you barely remember. and that one person from a class who added you after the semester ended. It contains the equivalent of casual acquaintances, people you have interacted with online without ever meeting, people who found your username somewhere in your digital footprint and initiated contact. It contains, in some cases, people like Marcus Webb, people like Derek Harmon, people whose intentions toward you are not friendly in any meaningful sense of the word. And every single one of those people, the good ones, the strange ones, the remembered ones, the forgotten ones, can, if location sharing is enabled, see exactly where you are at any time on a map that updates in real time. The threshold problem. Here is what I want you to think about. There is a threshold in these three stories, a moment in each of them where digital access became physical presence. Marcus Webb went from an account on a phone to a person standing in Ryan's closet. Derek Harmon went from a photograph of a door handle to a human being on Owen's back deck with a knife. Ashley Monroe and Jade Collins went from usernames on a map to a car on the street outside Cole's house with 3 large men inside. The threshold crossed in each case was made possible by one specific piece of information: location. Not profile photographs, not posted content, not any of the other information these platforms accumulate and display. Location. The precise geographic coordinates of where a person was, transmitted in real time to anyone on their friends list who thought to check. Marcus did not have to guess which house Ryan lived in. He did not have to follow him home from school, did not have to investigate or surveil or put in any of the work that physical tracking would have required in a pre-smartphone era. He looked at a map, saw a dot, and walked there. Derek's approach to Owen's house required some reconnaissance. The photographs suggest he had been observing the property from the outside before sending the door handle image. But the starting point was still location data. He knew which neighborhood. He knew which block. The photographs were the announcement that he had arrived. For Cole, the car followed him from an area near where his app showed him to be. The followers appeared on the map moving toward his home. The vehicle that parked on his street was not there by coincidence. Someone had looked at a map, seen a dot, and driven to meet it. This is not complicated. That is, in some ways, the most disturbing part. The mechanism is simple. The execution requires nothing sophisticated. Anyone who has ever used navigation on their phone understands the basic operation. You have a location. You put it in a map. You go there. The only thing separating these stories from your story is whether your location is currently visible to someone who should not have it. The people you forgot. You added. Let us be specific about something because specificity is useful here. Think about the last time you looked at your friends list, your followers, your connections, whatever your primary platform calls them, and actually went through it. Not skimmed the top 10, not noticed the number. Actually went through it, name by name, and confirmed that you knew who each person was and why they had access to your information. For most people, the honest answer is that they have never done this, or have not done it in months or years. The list grows incrementally. One request here, one follow back there, and the accumulation happens below the level of conscious attention. You go from 200 connections to 400 without any single moment where you decided to double the number of people who could see your location. This is how Marcus Webb got onto Ryan's list, not through any elaborate social engineering, not through hacking or technical exploit. He found a username, sent a request, and Ryan accepted because Ryan was too polite to think carefully about what he was agreeing to. The relationship that resulted, a social media connection that included location sharing, was never intended by Ryan. It was simply never examined. The unexamined connection is the dangerous one. Ryan examined his list after the fact. Owen examined his. Cole examined his. They all found, in the process of auditing their accounts in the aftermath of their respective encounters, people they did not remember adding, connections whose origin they could not trace, names that produced no memory at all when they tried to attach a face to them. Some of those connections were genuinely harmless. Old classmates, mutual acquaintances, people who had added them at a party years ago, and then never interacted with them again. Some were probably bots. Some were unknowable. The point is not that all unknown connections are threats. The point is that you cannot distinguish the harmless unknown from the dangerous unknown without looking. And looking is a thing most people never do. The quiet before. There is one more thing worth naming before we move to the final part of this. All three of these situations involved a period of apparent normalcy before the escalation. Marcus sent photographs and messages for hours before showing up at Ryan's window. Derek sent a photograph of a door handle before appearing on Owen's deck. Ashley and Jade sent a single compliment message before their location appeared on a map beside Cole's. The digital contact was the preamble. It was announcement and reconnaissance, and in some cases a test, a way of gauging response, measuring reaction, determining whether the target would engage or withdraw or ignore. In Ryan's case, the response that mattered most was not Ryan's reply to any individual message, but the fact that his location remained visible throughout. He did not block. He did not turn off location sharing. He remained accessible on the map for as long as Marcus chose to look at it. This is worth sitting with because it reframes the concept of digital safety. We tend to think of online danger as something that lives in content, in messages that are explicitly threatening, in photographs that clearly violate, in language that announces bad intent. We have developed pattern recognition for certain kinds of alarming communication. But none of these three situations began with alarming language. They began with ads and follows and a message that said you're cute and a photograph of a door handle. They began with things that, in isolation, could be innocent. The alarm was not in any single data point. It was in the combination, the sequence, the fact that digital access was being followed by physical approach. By the time the physical approach happened, it was already too late to prevent the threshold from being crossed. The only prevention available was earlier, at the level of access, who could see the location and who had been granted that visibility without sufficient examination. What you do now, the settings you need to change. Tonight, we are almost at the end of these accounts. Before we get there, before the summary, before the credits, before you click away from this video, I want to be direct with you about something. This video is not designed to make you afraid of social media. It is not designed to make you paranoid about everyone on your friends list or convinced that every unknown follower is a threat. Most people who follow you have unremarkable motivations. Most of the names on your connections list are genuinely harmless. The vast majority of location-enabled social features are used daily by millions of people without incident. But the incidents that do happen, the Ryans and Owens and Coles of the world, the people who go to sleep one night never imagining they will wake up to find the evidence of someone standing in their closet, those incidents share a common architecture. They are made possible by a specific combination of factors: accessible location data, insufficient access control, and the assumption that the friends list is curated when it is actually accumulated. You can control all three of those factors right now, tonight. It takes less time than you will spend watching the rest of this video. Open your primary social media app. Go to Settings. Find Privacy or Location Settings. Look for any feature that broadcasts your location, that shows your map to connections, that enables others to see where you are in real time. Turn it off. Not reduced, not limited to close friends, not adjusted. Off. Then go to your friends list, your followers, your connections. Filter for accounts you do not recognize. Accounts with low engagement scores. Accounts with no profile photograph or a clearly artificial one. Accounts that followed you from an unusual source or that you cannot recall adding. Remove them. Not because they are certainly threats. They are probably not. But because the cost of removing a harmless unknown is zero, and the cost of retaining a dangerous unknown can be much higher than that. Then go to whatever accounts you have linked publicly, your primary social profiles, your bio links, your website if you have one, and consider what they reveal about your physical location. Do you post photographs that show the exterior of your home, the street you live on, the school your children attend, the gym you use every morning at the same time? Each of those data points alone is probably fine. In combination, for someone motivated to compile them, they become a map. This is not about living in fear. This is about understanding how information works, how access compounds, how the assumption of safety in digital spaces has a habit of not keeping pace with the reality of digital spaces. The generation that grew up with this. Ryan was 17 when Marcus Webb stood in his closet. Owen was 16 when Derek Harmon appeared on his deck with a knife. Cole was 22 when the car parked outside his house, in the rain with 3 men inside. They were young. They were, by any reasonable measure, digital natives. People who had grown up with smartphones and social media and location-based features as ordinary facts of life. And yet they were completely unprepared for what happened, because nothing in their experience of these tools had prepared them for it. This is worth naming because it challenges a persistent assumption. The assumption that familiarity with technology produces safety with technology. The teenagers and young adults who grew up with these platforms are not, by virtue of that familiarity, better equipped to navigate their dangers. They may, in fact, be less equipped because familiarity breeds the particular blindness that comes from never having had a reason to look closely. Ryan had used location sharing for months before Marcus Webb entered his friends list. He had never thought carefully about it because he had never had a reason to. It had been background, a feature, a setting, a small icon on the map, not a risk he was actively managing. This is how most people use these features. Not carelessly in the sense of being reckless or uninformed, but carelessly in the literal sense, without care, without attention, because attention had never been required before. The question is, when does attention become required? Is it before something happens as a preventive measure, or after something happens as a response? For Ryan, Owen, and Cole, it was after. They are all fine now in the sense that they are alive, unharmed in any permanent physical sense, and living their lives. But fine is doing a lot of work in that sentence. Ryan still does not open his window at night. Owen still looks at the kitchen window when he walks through the room. Cole still hears the voice sometimes. You can make a different choice. You can do the audit, change the settings, examine the list before you have a reason that comes from personal experience. The last thing, 3 stories. 3 young men in 3 houses in America, each of whom discovered, at a moment of maximum vulnerability, alone and in the dark and trying to understand what was happening, that they had unknowingly given a stranger a window into their lives. Not a metaphorical window, a literal one in Ryan's case. The stranger was different in each account. Marcus Webb was the socially isolated kid from school who had constructed an obsession out of proximity and opportunity and whatever was happening inside a household, with no functional adult supervision. Derek Harmon was the calculated provocateur, the one who communicated in images before he communicated in presence, who showed up with a knife the way some people show up with a business card, as an introduction, as a statement of purpose. The men in the car were unknowable, which is, in some ways, the worst of the three, because Marcus and Derek have faces and histories, and eventually had consequences, while Ashley Monroe and Jade Collins remain usernames, and the car remains a car, and the voice outside Cole's window remains a voice without a name attached to it. What all three strangers had in common was access. Access that was granted, technically, voluntarily, through the ordinary operations of platforms that billions of people use, without incident every day. The grant was not malicious. The grant was not even conscious. It was default. It was passive. It was the result of never examining what these features actually do versus what we assume they do. Location sharing assumes the friends list is a circle of trust. The friends list is actually an accumulation of permissions issued at various points in time, under various circumstances, to various people, some of whom no longer fit whatever definition of friend prompted the original permission. Look at your list. Look at your settings. Think about who can see that map, who is checking it, and what they might do with the information it provides. Do this before you need a reason to do it, because the moment you need a reason, you will already be behind. Stay safe out there. Subscribe for more true stories that will keep you up at night. I'll see you in the next one.